Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Vaughn with Singing News, and I am here with Riley Harrison Clark. And he is here talking to us about his newest album that he's working on and how he's surviving quarantine right now. Hi, Riley. How are you?
I'm doing well. You said it. I'm surviving. I don't know if I'm doing much better than that, but I'm surviving.
So, how are the kids handling all of this?
At first they just kind of thought it was a longer weekend than normal, and then they haven't been back to school in months. It seems like so. They're trying to figure out: are we going back to school? Are we not going back to school? And we have ran out of creative ways to keep them busy. So it's generally opening the back door and saying, have at it. It's been interesting. I think they're having as hard a time as we are, simply because we're just not the family that sits around. So
Mhm.
it's been interesting to try and figure out and not go insane.
Yeah. How's the dog handling it?
The dog is fine because the dog just wants to be right by your side all the time. So the more that we are inside and not running around and leaving her at home, she's happy. So she would probably wish that quarantine would last forever.
Yeah. When you got into Southern Gospel, you were with Tribute and you
Yes.
traveled the world. I mean, it opened some amazing doors, and you sang with almost anybody and everybody you could possibly imagine in that world. How do you see Southern Gospel evolving over the next decade?
That's a great question. I think it's one that we've asked ourselves. I mean, it's been asked since before I was in the industry. I joined when I was 18. I was with Tribute for 9 years. And in that 9 years, I saw it begin to change in a way that either we were going to try and adapt to or not. And I think I don't want to say that it's going to go this way or that. What I always say in this when this question's asked, which seems like quite often, because it's a concern, um, is if we're continuing to sing the songs that are relevant,
Mhm.
both lyrically and stylistically, you're always going to have that audience. My dad buys his jeans at Tractor Supply. I buy my jeans at H&M. But that's because Tractor Supply is still open. And so if you're going to sing something that's still relevant lyrically and musically, stylistically, that doesn't jump so far out of what your fan base is used to, I think that everybody will be okay. And I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. I had the conversation with a fan that was genuinely concerned because they thought that it was not going to be around for another decade. But I most definitely believe that it will, because there's a lot of younger artists that are getting into it. The writers are seeing what change needs to happen and needs to take place. um, I think the future is bright for Southern Gospel, because of that, because of the artists that are coming in, because of the artists that are willing to maybe just shift enough, not that they're not to a point that they're uncomfortable, but to a point that they're going to still be able to reach younger audiences.
Mhm.
I know that with Tribute, we when I first started, we were real traditional, which is what our fan base was really loving. But then we realized that we would go to a fairly progressive church on a Sunday morning, and we would grab the attention of the younger audience just enough.
Mhm.
And so we thought, well, what if we tried to push something just a little bit more progressive? Not that made us uncomfortable, because if we're uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And so we started reaching in ways that we knew would still be relevant to the audience that we had then, and try our best to reach the audience that's ahead. That I
Right.
don't think we're going to lose. I don't think that it's just that they've got to know that it's not their grandparents' music,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it would always be the case if we were brought into a church and the music minister was older and he was a fan of Southern Gospel. On a Sunday morning, you've got an audience of everyone.
Right.
And we would have the younger audience come up to our table and say, I really enjoyed that, and it was like they were surprised.
Mhm.
When the simple fact of it was, they just didn't know anything about it.
Right.
So I think if we can continue to sing relevant lyrics and be able to present something that stylistically isn't so far out of the box, but that is still who you are, I think that the future is bright.
Yeah. So taking that step to leave Tribute and become a solo artist, how scary was that?
Terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying because when I came in, one of the questions that's asked me most is from younger students of mine. I'm a vocal coach outside of this, and they'll ask, how do I get involved? How do I, and I'll be honest, my story isn't like the average story. My story isn't a super encouraging story because it literally happened overnight for me. I can't say that there was so much work. I just worked and worked and worked, but it literally was, God, I need you to do something different in my life because I'm about to lose it. And the next morning is when I got a call from Gary Casto of Tribute. And in 3 days, I moved to Nashville, jumped on the road with a group that was already really well established. They had a bus, we were singing every stage that anybody wanted to sing on. So my story getting into it was now there was a lot of hard work vocally that I had put in, but as far as, chasing down this group or I didn't do that. So I always try and pick somebody else's story whenever I encourage someone to get involved. But I say that to say, I just jumped into it, and it was for the most part easy, and it was comfortable, and things were going really well. We had double words were coming just every year. We would be nominated the last few years and #1 songs, and I was in a place that was very comfortable and succeeding at that. So for me to turn around and know without a doubt that the Lord spoke to me and said, hey, it's time. It was really confusing because I'm sitting here thinking, no, it's time whenever things aren't going right. It's time when things are really hard. It's time to change but that wasn't the case. My wife and I knew that a change was coming, but, and for about 1.5 years or so, we just didn't know when, and we truthfully didn't even know what the change may look like. We didn't necessarily anticipate that it being me leaving Tribute, but I woke up one morning on the bus and it was like the Lord said, all right, this weekend's it. You got to talk to Gary. And I was terrified. And I didn't understand it, truthfully, Jamie, because again, I was happy. Things were going really well. We had just released the best project at that time that we had. And so, yeah, it was terrifying, but I've been telling people and truthfully telling myself, if we'll just take the first step, 2 and 3 and 4 becomes so much easier, because you realize that when you take the first step, knowing that God encouraged you to do so, there's going to be something under your foot. There's going to be something that's going to hold you. It's going to catch you. You may not understand it, and you may not even necessarily know who it is, but you know that when you took this step, you didn't fall. And so 2 and 3 and 4, that comes so much easier after that, because jumping off the bus wasn't the first, it wasn't the end. That was the beginning of many different decisions that would have had to be made throughout the past 1.5 years or so. And so it was very difficult. It was very scary, but I had to start believing everything that I had been saying, even more than I had before. And I think as singers, we're singing a lyric, and I tell my students, if you're going to sell something successfully, you have to believe it. And I think that's the upper hand that we have as artists, because if we're going to sell it, per se, on stage every night, you do have to believe it. And so when we get on stage discouraged, you start singing a lyric about the faithfulness of God. At least for me, it was very hard for me to just get up and sing a song. Not that I don't know that anybody just does that, but it was when I'd start singing a lyric of God's faithfulness or God's grace and forgiveness, I had to believe it. And so when I jumped off the road with the guys, there were a lot of lyrics going through my head that said, you know what, either you're going to start living what you sing, or you're going to live in fear. And fear, I didn't choose that. So,
well, I will say, watching you over this last year, you really have put in the hard work for your solo career. How are you preparing for this new album?
Well, the new album, matter of fact, I'm just getting masters back, so I'm excited about that. This new album, it won't be such a mainstream project, but I wanted to let the fans that I've had through the 9 years that I was with the group, the fans I don't want to leave behind,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to let them know that I'm not going to leave them behind. And in doing that, I've recorded some hymns on this project with some fresh, stylistically fresh melodies and whatnot. And so I'm excited to release songs that they're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
I love the old songs. And my heart was born. My heart for worship was born when I was very young. Before I knew what Southern gospel was. Before I just knew that I loved to worship. And so we've got some worship tunes on there as well. Matter of fact, just this morning was talking to some folks about a release date. Hopefully that's at the beginning of July. So, yeah, we're getting some things back, and I'm excited to share music that they're going to be familiar with, but that'll still be fresh. So,
well, I can't wait to hear it. So,
Thank you.
tell me, as a songwriter, I would love to know what your favorite lyric or song is that you have written.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick one, although there are like three in my head. At this moment in time, particularly with the COVID stuff and everything that everyone is walking through, I wrote a song with Lee Black and Susie Smith for my first solo record, Remember His Faithfulness. And the chorus just is, remember His faithfulness, remember His faithfulness, all He was yesterday, today He'll be the same. He promises nothing less. Though heartache may still remain. I'm trying to remember the lyrics of my own song. Though heartache may still remain, He never withholds His grace. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite lyrics, because there are a lot of times that we're hurting and we may not understand a lot, but His grace is still sufficient. And sometimes His grace and the peace of understanding His grace is the only thing that we actually have to hold on to. Mm-hmm. The heartache may still remain, He never withholds His grace. Still may withhold. I can't remember the last line.
That's okay.
But definitely remember His faithfulness, particularly at this time, because I think that it's something that I think when life is good, we just kind of forget about, because we don't necessarily have to rely on all the things that He was. And that's what when I sing that song, generally I'll preface it with the fact that every one of us has a moment in time when God has been faithful, and He's not going to change now.
Right.
And it's a whole lot easier to trust Him for what we're going through now if you remember all of those times that He was faithful before. So that's probably my favorite lyric currently.
The favorite lyric you didn't write and wish you had of?
Oh, Because He Lives.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Because He Lives. I would have wrote it had I thought about it.
There's quite a few.
Had I beat Bill and Gloria to it, maybe.
Right.
But, yeah, that's definitely the lyric I wish I would have wrote.
You would have had to be more in time to write that one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, there's several songs that you listen to and you go, oh my goodness, I could have written that. That's me. So yeah, I get that with Because He Lives. Do you have a message of hope that you would like to give to our listeners today?
I think that message is just what I was talking about with the lyric of my song, Remember His Faithfulness. It's been 2 months or so, however long it's been. I don't know. I don't even know what day of the week it is. And we're still not necessarily certain of what next week looks like. Or if things will get back to the way they were ultimately. As an artist and traveling and singing, that's my career, that's my life. You wonder if people are going to show up like they used to. And there are all these questions and all of these uncertainties that we have. But truthfully, Jamie, the only thing that gives me peace and makes me wake up with a smile most days is knowing that God was faithful before. He's going to remain the same. And that's not just my idea of things. It's not my opinion. It's the Word. Because all of those things that He was before, faithful and full of grace and mercy and forgiveness, the Word says that He's not going to change. He's the same as He was then, and He'll be the same today and forever. So I don't know. My message of hope is that just trust Him, just and seek Him and take advantage of the quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I've had to remind myself to do. I'm trying to think of all these ways to keep myself busy and not, lose my mind, when I'm forgetting that, what, why not spend an extra 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know, a day in the Word of God. So that's my message of hope. Just keep trusting him and know that he's going to be faithful. He's not going to change.
Riley, thank you so much for coming on today and talking with all of us. And I can't.
Well, thank you for letting me.
You're welcome. And I can't wait to hear the new album when it's out.
Yay. Me either.
Okay. Well, you have a great day.
You as well.